in the wrong position. We're in the wrong position.
We're textbook position for ambush, sir. I think we should sit tight and let the enemy team come into our killing zone.
They're right out there somewhere. Let's just get them.
Sir, we have perfect cover here.
Lieutenant, deploy your troops.
Second platoon, move out. What? Tactical column.
Captain, you've just been killed, along with 95% of your company. Your outfit?
Easy Company, 2nd Battalion, 506.
Leave 3 wounded men on the ground and report back to the assembly area.
You.
I didn't initially intend to do this part of the series, but I think Incompetence in regards to Sobel is probably equally as valuable as looking at competence with Dick Winters. Leaders are always teaching us something, whether that's good or bad. The good things we want to put in our toolkit to try to emulate someday. The negative things we should also hold close and know that these are things that we want to make sure that we don't do when we're in those positions. Probably the first lesson we learn here is carry your own damn map, how important the hard skills are, like land nav, knowing your strengths and weaknesses, right? I'm personally just an average land naver, okay? I think this whole you can't spell lost without lieutenant thing is a little overblown maybe, because I've sent plenty of my squad leaders to Islik and they failed land nav, right? And so whether they're corporals, lance corporals, or sergeants, I think it's a systemic problem within our organization that we aren't very good at land nav. So I think most lieutenants are probably generally better than most of their troops at land nav. That doesn't mean that there aren't outliers that are really bad at land nav, and that doesn't mean that we as officers don't have the responsibility to hold the standard there or exceed the standard. But ultimately, going back to just me as an example here, I know I'm okay at land nav. I know I can provide a backstop. I know I can verify where we are. But I also know that when I was a company commander, I had a lieutenant that was from Arkansas and Texas. He was really good at land nav. He was actually the best land naver in the company. So typically, I put him on point to land nav. When I was a platoon commander, I had corporals and lance corporals that were better at land nav than me, and so they ran nav. I was a backstop. I was still always trusting but verifying, right? But it's the idea that you can delegate authority but never responsibility. So if Sobel doesn't have the self-awareness to know his own strengths and weaknesses, that's a big mistake, right? I think humility is generally one of the big issues we see here, okay? He receives sound tactical advice from a subordinate, right? Winters tells him this is a good place to conduct an ambush, but he doesn't listen. What I want to emphasize is that as a leader, we don't have a monopoly on good ideas. We should encourage from our subordinates to hear what they have to say, to receive their input. Have the humility to acknowledge and accept when an idea is better than yours. Sometimes you'll say, hey, we're going to go left, and then we're going to go right, and that's how we're going to seize objective alpha. Any questions? Anybody have any feedback? And then someone will say, hey, sir, actually, when your platoon sergeant going to say, so I've actually patrolled that area of operations. I know that terrain. You can't go left. It's no-go terrain. It's impassable. You need to go right if you want to get up into that objective area. And I'll say, well, Staff Sergeant, I didn't know that. That's a very good point. Thank you. Brief is now changed. Plan is now changed. We're going right before to get into the objective area, right? But one, that takes a little bit of humility. It takes a recognition that I don't have a monopoly on good ideas. It takes a willingness to receive input and have a command climate or have a culture where people aren't sycophants or people feel like their voice matters, right? And that they're encouraged to speak their truths or their opinions. Sometimes I'll brief an order and I'll say, hey, here's what I think we're going to do. Here's what I want us to do. And then there's going to be some dissension. There's going to be some pushback. And I'll need to stick to the plan as briefed. And maybe it's because I have more SA from the whole order or the operations that are going on. Maybe I'm tracking some things from higher that not everyone is. Maybe it's my own experience that tells me that this is maybe the best plan or the best way to do this. And maybe I don't have the time to explain that to everyone. If I have the time, I'll sit down and say, hey, I'm doing this thing because these are the factors that are driving me. But sometimes I just have to say, hey, we're going to go left. And I don't care that you guys are saying we need to go right. I'm telling you, we're going left. Copy? Is everyone tracking? Good. Okay. And my expectation is then when my subordinates go brief that they then own the plan, right? They don't say, well, the sir says, I don't really agree, but the sir says this is the plan, so this is what we're going to do, okay? Your people are more likely to own that plan if they know that you do generally have the humility to hear everyone out. They'll own that plan if you've given them that confidence. But if you haven't given them that benefit of the doubt previously, then you might find that when they go to brief the plan, they're kind of throwing you under the bus, which is kind of setting us up for failure before we even begin to get into the execution. When you demonstrate that humility, and even if they have that dissension or disagreement, when they go to brief that plan, they're going to say something like, hey, listen up. Here's the plan. And they're not going to say, here's the sir's plan. Here's higher. Listen up. Here's the plan. It's going to come like, and it's going to sound like it's coming directly from them, right? But they're only going to brief it that way if they have that confidence in you in the first place, that you are generally looking out for them. Okay. We see Sobel has a clear lack of tactical patience. They're in an advantageous position to conduct an ambush. Don't be in a rush to get your men killed. Take a breath and cycle your loop. Winter says, hey, this is a good ambush pause. Sobel feels compelled to push. I personally am pretty aggressive, and I can empathize with that need or that desire to push. I've learned the hard way that sometimes a tactical pause, a little, take a knee, cycle the loop, then push, right? He could have benefited from a tactical pause there. Okay, he responds to Winter's advice with, let's just get them. They're out there. Let's just get them. You know, there's a difference between being reckless and courageous, and we're all judged by results. When you get 95% of the company killed and you fail the mission, well, you're reckless. But if you sustain some casualties but seize the objective, then you're considered courageous, right? Understand that in combat there are no do-overs. This is not Call of Duty. No one will respawn. The best form of troop welfare is hard, realistic training. So train like you fight. In this scenario, we see Sobel being very cavalier with his men. Hopefully you wouldn't be so cavalier in combat with your people's lives, so you shouldn't be taking those kind of liberties in training. I will say, this is one of the few scenes where Winters needs to demonstrate a little more courage. It's almost heretical for me to question or call out Winters' moral courage, maybe even blasphemous. And in the next video, I intend to talk about his character and his moral courage. But after he provides his initial input and says, hey, sir, this is actually a good position to conduct an ambush, Sobel doesn't listen and says, I want you to get your men, get them out, get them on the line. Winters pretty quickly acquiesces to that order. What I would like to see is one more re-attack, one more challenge of that order to say, hey, sir, just so you're tracking, if we go out there right now, we're probably going to get murdered. If we stay here, we could probably inflict heavy casualties on the enemy. You still want us to go out to get murdered? And if, Sobel says, yes, go get murdered. Okay, roger that. We're going to go get murdered. But I think I would have liked to see him maybe rebut that one more time. I remember one time my CO gave me an order. It was after we had set up for an ambush patrol. We had broke down the ambush. We were almost in friendly lines of my platoon patrol base, and he said, hey, the enemy's in your ambush position. I said, hey, I called you an hour ago and said we broke down that ambush. He said, okay, well, I don't care. Go back. They're all over there. I said, well, if we go back, it'll be an enemy ambush. They're going to ambush us. And they were all watching the Scan Eagle. They're all watching the feed, the ISR feed, and they're all very excited because they see enemy in the open. It's more like a video game to them, right? And I say, okay, I disagree. I don't think we should go. If you're telling me I have to go, I'll go. Before I go, just let me make it clear, and I'm saying this all over the radio, on the company net. If you are telling me to go, we are going to sustain casualties, and we are not going to be able to effectively ambush the enemy as you think we're going to, because we're 500 meters from that position, and by the time we return to that position, we will be at a disadvantage. Do you still want us to go? Yes, there's enemy there, go. Roger that. So I went to my platoon. I had 2 squads out at the time. And I said, hey, I need 7 of you to stay with me. And my platoon sergeant, who was a consummate professional, total badass. This was the first time, and we had a year-long workup. We were a couple months into deployment. This is the first time he ever voiced dissension to anything I said. He said, sir, this is fucking stupid. We are going to get people hurt if we go back there. And I said, Sassart, I agree. You're right. And I'm not asking you to go. Per SOP, I need 7 people to stay out here with me. The ECP, the entry control point, right? It's just 100 meters down the road. Everyone can go back. I need 7 volunteers. Well, if you know anything about Marines, we all went back. Within 10-15 minutes, we were back in that area, and almost immediately we started taking casualties. Had Marine shot, U-shape ambush. Total shit sandwich that we found ourselves in. And we fought our way out, but it took a lot of heroics. It took a lot of heroics from young men manning machine guns, getting their guns up, exposing themselves to great risk. My radio operator jumping out of the canal when it was almost suicide to get out of the canal and starting to pull people out, right? My corpsman swimming in the canal under bridges to try to get to the casualties, start patching them up. It took a lot of heroics to get through that scenario when it didn't have to. Now, could I have played that differently? Potentially. I always kind of second guess myself or armchair quarterback myself in those situations, but I definitely pushed back a couple times, and we see Dick Winters, I think, in this scenario, he's still very junior, right? But he kind of, I think, acquiesces a little bit too early. Finally, the look on the men's faces tell you all you need to know in this scene. They're tracking that Sobel will get them killed in combat. They know he is incompetent. Let's pretend that Sobel was a great guy, that he was a man of character, that he really cared about his troops. Now, we know that generally maybe those aren't accurate, but let's pretend that they are. They still wouldn't follow him because they know he's incompetent. They know he's going to get them killed, okay? So rule number 1, know your shit. When we return to Be Like Dick, we'll talk about character. Thanks.